Death rays, UFOs, secret government projects, all that and more today with my guest, Tim Swartz, on the Order of Chaos podcast.
The following message is transmitted.
Tim, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be with you today.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. Tim, you are the author of The Lost Journals of Nikola Tesla, Incredible Alien Encounters, and America's Strange and Supernatural History, as well as other books. You've got a website, conspiracyjournal.com, and you are the host of the Exploring the Bizarre radio show on Kcor Radio. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I'm really a huge fan of your work, and we've got a lot of the same interests here, so I'm very excited to talk to you.
Oh, well, it's I always enjoy doing these types of shows and hopefully finding a new audience who, may have never heard of Nikola Tesla or any of the other things that I write about and I'm interested about. So, it's just really a real pleasure to be with you today. And thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is what I love. This is what I love to do more than anything, is to talk about the paranormal, the occult, the strange and the unusual, and to find like-minded people who have an interest in this stuff, but who also, haven't lost their mind in the search for truth, because it can certainly happen, And I think that when it comes to Nikola Tesla in particular, I think that he didn't go down that path of losing his mind, but he was discredited and and called this crazy person towards the end of his career and his life, because people didn't want everything that he was doing and creating to be put out there into the world necessarily.
Tesla was a unique personality. I mean, I suppose nowadays he would be considered somebody who's on the spectrum, I think is the correct term. Now, when he was an adult, he was very focused in his career, in his inventions, and his research. He was also very sociable. I mean, he did like to go out and enjoy himself. As he got older, he became more eccentric. And I think that's where a lot of the stories that we have today about Tesla have come from, because, he got to the point where he was, say, for instance, when he would eat, he would only eat in one particular restaurant. It was a restaurant that was attached to the hotel that he was staying at, but his silverware had to be put out in the exact same order every time. He had to have so many napkins. His glass, his water, and his whiskey glasses had to be at a certain place every time. He detested women wearing pearls for some reason. So it's stories like that we have now that have convinced a lot of people that Tesla wasn't just eccentric, that he was just, insane. But that was just one aspect of his life. And it does seem like, though, that a lot of scientists who are literally geniuses tend to also be rather eccentric. What was it? Somebody said there's a fine line between genius and madness, and I suppose in certain aspects, Tesla fit right within that category.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of which, so does Elon Musk. It's another sort of
Yes.
modern example. I definitely think that the line between genius and madness gets blurry.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're describing in Tesla sounds to me like he, may have had a case of OCD that was exacerbated as he as he got older. And I think that that's something that can happen to people who are using their brain power at that high of a frequency, of a processing rate, and creating these incredible inventions coming right out of their own mind. That's got to take a toll on you.
Well, right. Even when he was a kid, Tesla had this mind that was just constantly going. I don't know if it's ever been proven one way or the other, but I suspect that he probably had an eidetic memory. He did, even as a kid, he was inventing, like little movable toys and things like that. I guess he invented some kind of, I think it would be kind of like you'd call it like a car or something like that, that was motorized by June bugs. Yeah.
Wow.
I suppose it had, and the descriptions, vary from a biographer to biographer, but it was probably something where he had kind of like like the type of wheel that you would put in a cage for like hamsters and pet rats and things like that. He probably had something like that he would put like, big June bugs into it, and they'd rotate it and make whatever he had made, roll across the pavement. But, that's the kind of mind that he had right from the very beginning. But, he also had this ability that has been written about quite a bit, with all kinds of speculations, from the fairly serious to then just, really right far out there, where if he was working on an idea, he would reach a point where he would have a vision, and he described it. He said that this vision would appear in front of his eyes in 3D, almost like a hologram, where he could see whatever it was that he was trying to come up with. It would appear in front of him. He could mentally rotate it in any direction. He could take it apart bit by bit, and then he had it. That was his invention. He had been working for a long time when he was younger on developing the AC motor, which in his day, his university professors said that, there could never be an AC motor because it would be perpetual motion. They weren't thinking it through, but, Tesla knew that an AC motor could be possible. And he said that one day he was with a friend walking, just walking through a park, just having a normal conversation, when boom, all of a sudden the AC motor appeared in front of him. And he saw it complete, and he knew this was it. And he actually stopped and with a stick drew in the dust the blue, just really quick, the blueprint, so he could keep it in his mind. And sure enough, when he went back and put it together, it worked. And throughout his life, he would have these visions on devices that he was working on. So, some people say that, it was some kind of psychic ability, or maybe he was tapping into the Akashic record or something like that. It's hard to say. There have been other people throughout the years who have the same kind of ability where they can all of a sudden just visualize completely something that they're working on, and then make it a reality. But Tesla seemed to be the person who could really profit off of that ability.
Yeah, I have an interesting sort of idea about that myself, and it's not too far off from anyone else's. But when we say things like the Akashic records, or that he was tapping into higher dimensions, or these, I feel like what we're saying is that he had access to his subconscious mind in a way that maybe other humans don't have. Now, I've actually experienced this for myself, and not to any degree like Nikola Tesla, but as a tarot reader. When I do a tarot reading, I put myself into somewhat of a trance state, and usually I put the cards out, and then the story just comes to me and I'm able to tell my client what's going on with him. And I have an incredible success rate, very, very accurate, but it's not me. I'm accessing this other part of my mind, and something interesting is coming out. Now, in the book Liber Null by Peter Carroll, which is sort of the chaos magic Bible in ways, he talks about something called the psychic sensor, which is this part of your mind that basically blocks this kind of stuff out because it's not really relevant to you. And it's not going to do you any good in your day-to-day life. But, maybe a person like Tesla, just his psychic sensor maybe wasn't there, or he scrubbed it, or he wanted to go into that place and develop these abilities. I do think that we all can do this through meditation and some of these kind of transcendent states. But I think that geniuses like Einstein and Tesla just had access to that part of their brain. That's the quantum computer. The part of you that's, let's say beating your heart and growing your hair right now and decides when you blink. None of that's all automatic, right? It's all relegated to the part of your mind that is a huge portion of your mind that's dedicated to doing these things. I feel like if you can access that, maybe you can access this realm of genius.
Right. Well, and there have been people who have been working on ideas and then will get their inspiration from dreams. Which, again, that's very much like what you were saying. You have to knock down, your conscious mind, which is constantly filtering that subconscious from coming through. And I can't think of the gentleman's name now, but there was a chemist who was trying to work out the structure of a certain chemical compound. And again, I can't remember what it was, but he had a dream of snakes grabbing their tails and rolling across the ground. And when he woke up, he realized that's what this, this chemical was. That's what it was. That's what it looked like. And then, it led to all kinds of further discovery. So, Tesla, seemed to be one of these types of people who had the ability at just the right time and place to allow his subconscious to come through. Because, it's been said that if you're working on a problem consciously, your subconscious has already figured it out and is just trying to find a way to get it to your consciousness. And, as well as I do, the harder you seem to try to work on something, the harder it is for it to come through. And oftentimes, you just have to let it go. I know that myself, a lot of times, I get a lot of my inspiration while I'm taking a shower. That's when the ideas come through. Other people, they'll go for a walk or, go fishing or something, they're relaxed. They're not thinking about anything in general. And that allows your subconscious then to bubble through. And then the idea comes to you. It's a wonder, considering that the way that our minds work, where the conscious mind is constantly trying to inhibit the subconscious, that we've managed to get anything done. And I suppose that at one time in our past, it had to have been that way because, a couple of thousand years ago, our main concern was not to be eaten by that tiger, and you didn't have time for the most part to try to figure out what's the best way to chip away at a piece of flint in order to make a sharp tool to, defeat that tiger. And then at some point, Og had a dream and tried it out and it worked. And that seems to have been our history from the very beginning.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel like there's real truth in that. And I personally do a sort of question answer meditation frequently, where if I want to figure something out, or if I want to sort out an idea that I maybe have, and this isn't something like a situation where I would ask my cards. This is me trying to sort out a concept. I'll pose the question to myself, and then I'll go into a meditation, and I will absolutely do everything I can to not think about it, because that's when I know the answer will come. Like you said, it's in the shower, it's while you're on a walk, it's when you're not thinking about it that answer just pops into your mind. But the more you try to sort it out, like on paper, you can sit there all day long and just get mad, and it's not going to come through for some reason. It's so interesting how our minds work that way. And I feel that if we were able to really say that we know this is how it works and start to use this as a tool, we're going to make tremendous progress with our mental abilities.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, and it's always like, 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. I mean, we've had periods in our history where there's a renewed interest in mind powers, as they used to be called. I mean, especially, the 1920s saw a really big resurgence in not only the occult, but trying to develop your mental abilities to try to get a better understanding on how our mind works with the universe in general. I mean, you've heard, there was maybe about 10 years ago, there was that book, The Secret. I think that was the title, of it was, that came out, and everyone acted like, oh my gosh, this is the new and great thing. Well, I mean, people were writing about this, back in the early 20th century. They just didn't call it The Secret. It was called, The Laws of Attraction.
Which is sort of in my opinion, a watered down, distilled version of the Hermetic principles.
Yes, exactly.
The combination of the Hermetic principles can equal the law of attraction, but if you truly understand the Hermetic principles, you've got a much better grasp on it than just saying, if I think about what I want will happen. I mean, there's real truth in that, though, and I do think that people should. That's a great first step, is to understand that your thoughts create your mood and how your day's going to go. But there's so much more to it than that.
Oh yeah. Right. It's not quite that simplistic, but I mean, you see then, people were really, interested in that, and there were a lot of books written about it, and then it kind of faded away. And then, you had, like, in the 60s and 70s, there was kind of there was a resurgence in this kind of interest. And once again, it kind of, disappeared. And once again, a lot of this stuff has come back in the 21st century, and I think that with each one of these cycles, people have a greater understanding of this stuff. Eventually, it may take another couple of centuries. I think that we'll have a much better grasp on how we're attuned to the universe, how, not only are we a part of the universe, but the universe is a part of us. Right now that seems to be kind of like a far out concept, but, I think that with each cycle, we'll have an even better understanding on how this works. I mean, we may never ever. We're material beings in a material world, and we'll probably never be able to completely grasp some of these types of concepts. But I think that we'll eventually reach a point where science will acknowledge that, there's a lot more to our reality than we're going to be able to conceive, and that but just having that knowledge that there's more going on, I think that's going to be really probably the next major step when it comes to our acceptance of how we are a creative part of the universe. I don't know if that made sense. You start off on a tangent there, but
hey, that's what we're all about on this show. It made absolutely perfect sense, and it reminded me of one of Nikola Tesla's most famous quotes, which is that if you want to understand the keys to the universe, I'm going to get this slightly wrong. Don't quote me here. He said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy and vibration. Right? We're talking about being attuned to the universe. Absolutely. When you attune yourself, and this is through your beliefs and your thoughts and your understanding, when you attune yourself to the idea that you're in a relationship with the universe, that you're not separate of it, then you've kind of raised yourself up a little bit into a higher level of understanding. And that's a continual, ongoing, never ending process. We currently, I think we understand less than 0.000.1 of the entire electromagnetic spectrum as far as what we can interact with and experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that Nikola Tesla, one of the things that he understood, maybe not in these terms, but he had this, understanding that we live in a paranormal universe, and that these things there's way more going on that we're aware of. Mm-hmm. And then you can sort of tap into it and you tune yourself to it. And go, moving into that understanding that we're in sort of a paranormal universe. That's what I'm really excited about and kind of what I want to see happening in the future. Because like I said, I love these things. I love these concepts. I just think they're endlessly fascinating. And I was thinking about another thing that has come up recently, and this goes back to Nikola Tesla having this sort of OCD, is he was really into the numbers 3, 6, and 9. Mm-hmm. Can you expand on that? Do you know what that's about?
Tesla felt that these numbers played a significant role in the universe, but he never really elaborated too much on why he believed this way. And of course, other people have written these, huge long discourses on how these numbers play an important role in mathematics and the construction of quantum space and the building of the multiverse. But I really have no idea. But Tesla, kind of like how people now keep seeing the numbers, 1111, in their lives. It was the same way with Tesla. And in fact, I had mentioned earlier about some of Tesla's eccentricities when it came to, say, like how things were set up for his meal. A lot of things in his life had to be in threes or divisible by threes, that sort of thing. Like I said before, he had to have like 3 forks, three drinking glasses or 9 napkins, things like that. But just exactly why Tesla felt that these numbers were somehow significant. I've yet to really be able to figure it out. And again, that's part of my own failings as, because I don't really understand higher mathematics very well. I'm more, I'm a reporter, I'm a journalist. So that's more my area of expertise. I should point out also that through the majority of Tesla's life, he was not a believer in psychic powers, the paranormal, ghost stories or things like that. He thought that stuff was hogwash. On the other side, he was very religious. His father was an Eastern Orthodox priest. And in fact, his father had hoped that Tesla would follow him into the clergy. And at one point, when Tesla was a teenager, he became very sick to the point where they thought he was going to die. And Tesla made a promise. His father made a promise to Tesla that said that, look, if you survive, I'm not going to go. Great thing for his dad to say to him. But if you live, I'm not going to keep bothering you about being a priest, because it was an area of contention between the two. I'm not going to bother you about being a priest. If you want to go and continue your education, go into university, that sort of thing. I will let you. And Tesla rallied at that point. He said, yes, I don't have to be a priest, because that was the direction that his life was going, that he was going to have to be an Eastern Orthodox priest. But thank heavens he didn't. But now, as Tesla grew older, he started to develop an interest, especially in Eastern philosophies, because he saw a lot of similarities in what some of these Eastern teachings were putting out compared to what he was discovering with, like you said, the energies and vibrations of the universe. And so, he started to think, well, maybe there is something to this kind of stuff. He still wasn't readily, he wasn't going to accept that, ghosts could come down and haunt us and that sort of thing. But, he became more open to the idea that, what you called, the paranormal universe. Tesla saw it more along the lines of things that seem to be paranormal to us now will be readily understandable by science in one form or another, at another date. And I have to agree with him that I think that a lot of things that right now that we ascribe to being paranormal, even in the form of like you said, like chaos magic, probably has some kind of basis in science. It's a science that we don't understand, but I think that everything can be understandable to a certain extent at some time. But then again, like I said earlier, and what Tesla has said, we're limited by our physical brain. And so there are going to be things that are just going to be frustratingly always outside of our reach. But then that's what makes it all so wonderful, Yeah. And Tesla felt the same way. That was the excitement of it all. If we had the ability to understand everything, life would end up being really, really boring.
It would actually be, in my opinion, meaningless.
Yes.
It would be meaningless. There would be no search for meaning because we would understand everything. And I do believe that part of what we're doing here is this amazing adventure that we're on. And that adventure is only made possible through a limited understanding of our circumstances.
Right.
And I agree completely that these concepts will be understood by science, that they are not, when I say paranormal, it's the paranormal will become the normal.
Right.
And this continuous, never-ending process where we just understand more and more of what's really going on around us. I feel personally that a lot of religions and ancient mystical practices are symbolic science.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way to understand the science back there, but you could understand the symbolism of it and apply it to your life and apply it to how you operate your own mind. For example, Buddhism is an exposition on consciousness. That's incredible if you look at it that way. So these things will become the science of the future. And that is so exciting to me.
Yeah, it really is. And, and when we say that, the paranormal is going to be the science of the future, that doesn't mean that we're going to go and discount these things that we love, to talk about, psychic abilities, ghosts and hauntings, things like that. I believe that all those things, I think that all of these things are real. I always tell people when they ask me, oh, you believe in UFOs and ghosts and things like that. And I say, no, I don't believe in anything. I said, if you start believing in things, then that closes your mind down to new ideas and possibilities that may present themselves to you at a later date. Especially, somebody like me who research and investigates the world of the weird. And if I start believing, say, for instance, that UFOs are nuts and bolts craft from other planets visiting us with scientists inside then that kind of closes my mind down to other possibilities. If new evidence shows up that says, well, it could be, we have evidence that these are interdimensional crafts from other other planes of reality that are visiting us. If I'm stuck into that belief system of nuts and bolts craft from another planet, then, my mind is going to say, nope, that's not true, and refuse to listen to it. So I try to say, I don't really believe in anything. I like to entertain certain ideas and speculations, but I'm always open to new ideas, new evidence, as long as it's good evidence and properly vetted. And once I got off onto this tangent, I don't remember what I was talking about. I know what it was. I was saying that just because we may have a scientific explanation for things like ghosts and psychic ability, doesn't make them any less real. I mean, I do think that consciousness is all pervasive throughout the universe, and that our own individual consciousness does go on after this physical body passes away. But just because we come up with a scientific explanation on how that happens doesn't mean it's any less real,
or any less spectacular.
Yes, exactly. Because I've made this statement to other people and they say, well, if there's a scientific explanation for ghosts, you're saying that they're not real. No. You're not getting my point. I mean, it's right now we don't understand how they are real. Just because there'll come a day where we'll know why they're real, they're still real.
Yeah, absolutely. And having lived in a haunted house and had a horrifying experience, you could never convince me that what I experienced was not real. I chose to be homeless rather than stay in that house. I ran away from that place.
Wow.
And I'm not a scared person. Okay, I'm scared of sharks, and that's it. That is it. And I choose not to get in the ocean where I grew up in Santa Cruz, California. I choose not to jump in that ocean because I know that there's great whites everywhere. That's my own personal fear. But when I lived in that house, I had never felt more terrified in my life of anything, and it was real. Now, of course, I believe there's a scientific explanation for it, and I think that the scientific explanation is going to be that ghosts are real, and here's how it works.
Right. Okay, you're going to have to give me at least one example of what happened in that house that terrified you so much.
Okay. The first day...
I love stories like that.
I'll tell you about it. The first day we moved in, my ex-girlfriend and I, this is many, many, many years ago, I met my roommate, and the first thing he said, this was in San Francisco, by the way, in one of those tall old houses. There's a bunch of us living there. And when we moved in, my roommate said, "Oh my God, thank God you're here. I can't be alone upstairs anymore." I was like, all right, okay. And it was noises at first. It was just the typical, noises and this and that and creaks and that. But then it came down to, and everyone in the house would experience this. When you were taking a shower upstairs, instead of a curtain, there was a glass door, and you would hear knocking on that glass when you were alone in the shower with the door locked, man. And every hair on your body would stand up, and you'd be terrified to look out. And of course, you never see anything. Mm-hmm. Now, I believe that the thing that was in that house lived specifically in my bedroom. And I'm not joking, and I want everyone who's listening to know that I'm not fucking with you here, okay? I witnessed my ex-girlfriend become possessed twice. Being in that room, you could feel the tension and the anger and the hate of whatever this thing was. So it was so palpable that my hair is standing up just thinking about it now. And I had 2 nervous breakdowns just being in there. It just messed with your mind, and you could sense a malevolent presence and it was terrifying. And we lived there for like 3 or 4 months, and we started talking about it more and more and more as time gone on. And eventually we decided, like, we got to get the fuck out of here, because I was hospitalized for a panic attack that I had in that house. Life circumstances were extreme at the time. Absolutely. Things were going hard, trying to live in San Francisco as a young cook. Oh my God, it was a nightmare. But I could not stay in that house. And it wasn't because of any just normal stress. It was something very strange that was a living presence that was there. And here was the final straw. Okay, this was the final straw, and we decided to leave. I was upstairs. I had just gotten home from work, and we were going to go out and do something. And my ex-girlfriend. So we were like about to leave, and I said, I need to do something. And she went downstairs first. And then I got a phone call from her, and she said, where did you go? I said, what do you mean? I'm upstairs. Where are you? She's like, what do you mean? We just walked downstairs. I'm like, I'm not downstairs. I'm upstairs. And she said, no, you and I just walked downstairs. And she was mad, and she thought I was messing with her. And I'm like, I'm upstairs. I didn't walk downstairs with you. And then that was the final straw. We said, we got to get out of here. Something's up. We got to go. And then I've had a number of experiences like this throughout my entire life. And as sort of a paranormal professional, I'm a tarot reader and student of astrology and the Hermetic principles. I have a rather paranormal life because I do readings all the time. And, I have not trying to toot my own horn, but I have a very high success rate. And this is a normal thing for me. I don't know what it is. I can't explain it to you in perfect scientific detail, but I'm fully aware that there is another realm to which we have contact. We just don't fully understand the contact.
Mm-hmm. Well, and a situation like you were describing at your house in San Francisco, it's energy draining.
Yes.
It's almost like whatever this presence is feeds off of your energy, especially negative energies. I mean, they seem to do things that will get a rise out of you, either make you mad, make you scared. Boy, I mean, you describing, your doppelganger going downstairs with your girlfriend. That's you hear that a lot in high energetic places like that. And and the thing that I always wonder about these types of locations, it's kind of like the tree falling in the forest. Does it make a sound? If there's nobody in the house, is there any activity? Or does it require a human presence to activate it? I'm not quite sure, what the proper, words would be. But, if the house was abandoned for a number of years, would things happen there? Would the doors open on their own or things like that? Or does it take that human presence to supply it with that energy in order to manifest itself, and then it builds and builds and builds? Yeah.
And I think that's what it is. Now, I think that a location can have an energetic imprint on it, which creates a haunted location. But then it's like when people move in and they start experiencing these things, now you're feeding it. Like giving a dog a steak. Now you're feeding this thing, and it's going to try to create reactions in you and energetic, it's going to try to change your energy into something that it can feed off of. And I did feel, even after we left that house for about a month, that it followed us. But the energy was significantly depleted from having left that location. So it's a strange kind of mix of both. It's the interaction, but it's also the location.
Yeah. I've done a lot of research and field research on haunted locations, haunted people, and that sort of thing. And a lot of people think that a place has to be old or have had people die in it in order for it to be able to be haunted. But that's not the case. I mean, I've researched places that are just have been newly built, that have a lot of significant paranormal activity. And what seems to happen a lot of times is that these situations, the events start out very small. Things disappearing, doors being opened, and then it seems to accelerate, gain more energy to the point where whatever this is, it starts to develop a personality. And attempts to communicate, writings on the wall, notes being left in strange handwriting, telephone calls. These things actually will go and call, the house or call friends and things like that. And, as you keep playing that game with it, and then the personality becomes more and more developed. I have a book out called Jeff the Talking Mongoose, which was about a haunting on the Isle of Man in the 1930s. Started out, kind of like as I was talking about, and then pretty soon it developed this personality where it claimed that it was an actual physical mongoose that had been left on the island, maybe about 20 years before by a farmer who had brought him in to take care of the rabbit population. And this thing got to the point where it was always talking. You couldn't shut it up, and it produced physical effects as well. It would throw rocks from like cracks in the wall. It would pee on people from holes in the ceiling. It would eat things. It would kill rabbits. But once the people, the main focus was the father and the daughter. And once the father got sick and passed away and the daughter moved away to England to work on the war effort, then the energy slowly subsided and it was never seen, again. So the question is, was this, like a ghost, like we think of the traditional ghost or poltergeist, that this was something that had previously been living, passed away, and is now haunting the house, or more along the lines of, say, like an elemental, like a fairy or brownie or a puka.
I immediately think of some kind of prankster spirit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What was happening there?
Yeah, but it seems almost as if locations always have this low, and maybe it's pervasive throughout the universe, this low form of consciousness that under the right circumstances, maybe the right people, become energized and actually form then a consciousness, like an intelligent consciousness. Mm-hmm. And because a lot of these cases, the trickster element is very childlike, stealing stuff, opening door. You try to shut a door, it keeps constantly opening, doing little things to scare you. Like you said, you're taking a shower with the door shut and something is knocking on the glass door. That's something like a little kid would do almost, Mm-hmm. And then depending on the circumstances, I think that, they can develop an almost a malevolent type of personality for whatever reason. I don't know, but yeah, I mean that's an interesting story of what happened to you, and not that uncommon, from what I've researched over the years.
And not only are there haunted locations, but there are haunted people.
Yes.
And I consider myself to be one of them in many ways, but not in a bad way. I have had conscious communication with my spirit guides for many years, and they help me. They help me with everything. They help me with my business. They help me. When I read tarot cards, they're doing all the work. I'm just the conduit. And this connection has been so beneficial to my life, and it's sacred and very special to me. And I've even had communication with my father, who passed away when I was 12. And it's been wonderful. And I do believe that there's a whole other realm that's as full of life as the ocean is. Mm-hmm. And it's just not something we can see. But when the consciousness on the other side finds an individual that maybe has a low psychic sensor, or is just their doorway is open, they're going to latch onto that person because they can use this person to speak through, or to trance channels, for example, people who go into trance states and channel higher consciousness. It's fascinating, and I definitely think there's something very real happening here, and it doesn't happen just one way. It can happen in all kinds of different ways, and even perhaps through animals or through locations. There's definitely something.
Yeah, I had a friend who was very psychic, and also was a spirit medium, and he said that most people kind of have their aura just has a slight glow to it. But he says that there are some people that they glow, they're almost like a spotlight that shines out into the ether, and that spotlight attracts. You were talking about, almost like, an ocean just full of life. Well, people who have that spotlight, it's like turning on your porch light at night, all the bugs and moths, I think it's the same way. And that's what he said, it's the same way. You have all these different, entities. Some of them are discarnate spirits of people and things that lived previously. Others are elementals, but they are attracted to your light and will swarm around you. And if you're untrained, don't know how to control your abilities, then these things can take advantage of that. And I think that there are a lot of people who seem like that they are suffering from severe forms of mental illness, but I think actually they are. I don't like to use the word possessed, but I think you know what I mean. I mean, these things can take advantage of your energy fields and channel through you, feed off of you, and cause all kinds of disruptions in your life.
Yeah. Now, here's what I believe, and to bring it back to Tesla and frequencies. Mm-hmm. Your brain produces brainwaves, and these brainwaves are frequencies. You've got right. Delta, alpha, gamma, so on. I believe that just like a radio, if you attune your frequencies to match the frequencies of these entities, you can become in tune with them to a degree that could be very harmful to you, mm-hmm. or not. And going back and thinking about it, I had these really scary negative experiences before I had the really positive ones. And it was just a process of opening the door, which is terrifying. But I do believe that that's kind of what was happening, is that my frequency was attuning to the metaphysical realm.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you should say that about Tesla, because later in his life, after his wireless energy tower debacle, he worked on a number of different ideas, a lot of them in the medical profession, and he came up with the idea of trying to. He was working on a device that used electricity that would, I guess, try to tune into your brain waves. What is that? EKG, EEGs? I can't remember what the term was, but his idea was that your brain, and we know this is true now, that your brain basically is an electromagnetic device. It produces electromagnetic energy and electricity. And Tesla had the idea that possibly, if under the right conditions with the right kind of electromagnetic fields, that you could increase or decrease your intelligence. But not only just your, intelligence on, knowing mathematics and things like that, but he thought that it could also raise your ability in a spiritual sense. Now, I'm really paraphrasing this because once again, Tesla had his doubts along these lines of psychic powers and stuff, but he felt that not only could under the right conditions and the right types of electrical vibrations, that a person's abilities could be enhanced using technology. So yeah, I think it's a very interesting point that you brought out there.
Well, I got to say, I do this personally. In fact, millions of people do this. We use a type of meditation tool called binaural beats.
Yes.
Binaural beats change your brainwave frequencies by playing one tone in one ear and a different tone in the other ear and creating a middle frequency, which you can then use as a tool to lower or raise your frequency state. And this is an incredible tool for meditation. It can take you, using binaural beats, rather than spending 10 years mastering meditation, you can have that experience in 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's incredible. And so he was really onto something. And this is what I'm saying. And I think that the Tesla, in his time, he didn't want to, and most scientific people don't want to go woo-woo. They don't want to talk about spirit or this or that, but we're moving in that direction anyway, because the science is starting to line up with these concepts. And it's so exciting. And I think that Tesla is the sort of a linchpin figure. And I wonder if you would even appreciate this, but it's true. He's this sort of linchpin figure in the world of the paranormal, the occult, conspiracy theories, advanced, theoretical physics, science fiction becoming science fact. I mean, he's at the center of all of it.
Very, very much so. The thing about Tesla is that he had all these fantastic ideas, but he was hampered by the technology of his time, the availability of the technology, because, there are things that Tesla was working on and was conceiving, back in the late 19th, early 20th century that we are just now having the ability to take it that step further to make it a reality. But there are still things. For instance, Tesla's big dream was to be able to transmit electricity without wires. All right, Tesla. He was the guy who brought us our entire AC electrical grid system. Being able to talk over Zoom under our electric lights, that was all because of Tesla. We wouldn't, if it hadn't been for Tesla, eventually somebody would have come up with it, but probably, a lot later than Tesla did. But after he did that, he was constantly at war with Thomas Edison and, the Edison's company. And once Tesla had been awarded the contract to build the first electrical generating system at Niagara Falls, they had to get, that electricity from Niagara Falls to the rest of the East Coast. Well, that contract was awarded to Edison's company. They were the ones who, built the wires and everything like that. Well, that kind of honked Tesla and his company off a little bit. So Tesla was like, well, okay, I need to come up with a way to circumnavigate that. There's got to be a way that I can, send electricity to the houses without having to do wires. And he actually, he built a laboratory in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with that idea and actually proved that it would work, and went as far as to get financing. And he was building a tower in Long Island, New York, that would do just that. His concept would be kind of like our cell phone towers today, that there would be a number of these towers scattered at various locations that would generate the electricity, transmit them into the atmosphere, and then all you'd have to do at your home is to either put up an antenna on the roof or bury one into the ground. We're still not exactly sure how Tesla was going to do it. Tesla knew how he was going to do it, but he and his patents only go so far. He kept certain aspects of it out of the patents because of problems that he had previously had with his invention of radio. Everybody attributes Marconi as being the inventor of radio. No, it was Tesla. Marconi, in fact, was using parts from Tesla's patents, for his radio transmitters. So Tesla, he had learned his lesson at that point. Unfortunately, he had told his financiers that this tower was going to be like a radio transmitter, that it was going, they were going to be able to broadcast wireless radio stations, maybe even eventually telephone service, things like that. He was way ahead of his time. He forgot, he deliberately didn't mention that it was also going to transmit electricity, because he knew that the people who were financing him had gotten rich off of being able to meter electricity coming into your house. And he knew that they couldn't figure out how they could charge you if you were just getting the electricity out of the atmosphere. And he was correct. Once they found out what he was trying to do, they withdrew their funds. They blacklisted him so that he could, so that other people wouldn't give him money. And, his career basically was ruined. So now we're just now getting to the point where we have a better understanding what Tesla was trying to do. You've got like the Q pads for your telephones that you don't have to hook a wire into them to charge them. You just put the telephone on the pad and they charge. There's even some concepts now where all you have to do is bring your telephone into a room and it will be able to charge. But this is just very, minute stuff compared to what Tesla's idea was. And engineers still don't really know how he was going to do it. There's been some television shows where they think that Tesla was just going to put up a big Tesla coil. And I'm sure you've seen, like on YouTube, these videos of these big, huge Tesla coils that shoot out big bolts of lightning and things like that. That's that wasn't how he was going to do it. You do something like that, every church steeple, every television antenna, is going to be struck by lightning, man-made lightning. It was something else that was a little bit more finesse than that. But what it is, we still don't know. Maybe eventually we'll catch up to Tesla's great mind, but as long as we are thinking within the box, while Tesla, and I hate using the term Tesla was thinking outside of the box, we're not going to get close yet.
No, I totally agree. And, if Tesla had never lived, we would still be way, way, way behind with so much of the stuff, most likely. I can't say for sure, but just because we don't understand what he was going to do, that does not mean that he didn't understand what he was going to do. There's sort of a famous, infamous clip of Neil deGrasse Tyson on the Joe Rogan podcast, kind of going off about what he called the Nikola Tesla fan club and saying, you just don't understand that he couldn't do any of this stuff and it would fry you if you tried it. I'm like, dude, again, I'm not a scientist, okay? I'm a tarot reader, but it sounds to me like you guys just didn't understand what he understood. Nobody understood what he understood at the time. He was an innovator. He had ideas that went beyond what we know is possible, and he turned those ideas into reality. What's to say he couldn't do it again and again and again?
Yeah, somebody like Tyson they haven't done their homework. They just look at what we think we now know about electricity and how it can be, transmitted either wirelessly or with wires, and just, go with that, not understanding that Tesla would never have gone and got the money and actually started the construction of this tower if he was not certain that it was going to work. He proved at Colorado Springs that it was going to work. And this was going to be, his, his baby, his dream child, so to speak, and to prove to everyone. Again, for an example, later on, Tesla had developed his idea of what people now call a death ray. It wasn't so much a ray, but it was a beam. It was actually it would have been a particle beam weapon where you used electrified particles shot out of almost like a electric cannon to bring down missiles and aircraft. It would have been a defensive weapon. After Tesla passed, okay, let me step back with that. Tesla had this idea. He patented it, and actually he had offered it to a number of different countries at the beginning of World War II to use it, and everybody ignored him with the exception of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union actually paid him so much money for the use of his patents, and they obviously were pretty happy because about 5 years later, no, it was less than that, maybe about 2 or 3 years later, they gave him more money. And this was a point in his life where everybody thought that Tesla was like broken crazy, but obviously he was onto something. If the Soviet Union, not only would they buy his patent originally, but then give him more money later on because they were happy with what they got. There was a television show called The Tesla Files, where the host actually went to the Tesla Museum in Belgrade, used to be Yugoslavia, in Belgrade. And unfortunately, it's still... The curators at this museum do not let a lot of people see a lot of the notes and papers that they have that Tesla had produced. Some of this paperwork involved this death beam. All right, and now it used to be when they were under control of communist Soviet Union, they all this stuff was clamped down on. So the producers of the Tesla Files, they were able to see some of the blueprints for this death beam, but then the crucial part they were not allowed to see. They were told that they didn't have the proper passports to see this stuff. So this goes to show you that a lot of the so-called knowledge and impression that people like Tyson, as you said, have about Tesla is really they have underestimated what he was able to do and what his inventions were able to do for various reasons. And a lot of it, unfortunately, was due to Tesla's own paranoia of getting his stuff stolen. So you have these scientists who say that Tesla was just an engineer. He wasn't a scientist. He didn't know what he was doing. He would just build stuff and hope that it would work. And that's just I read this a lot of times with people, and I'm just like, all you've done is just been, reading about Tesla on websites. You haven't read his books. You haven't studied his patents. You have no idea what you were talking about.
and so many people, it seems, in my experience, and this goes from the most average person to the smartest person you'd ever meet, they have a very hard time accepting and comprehending that another person might be way past them.
Oh, yeah.
Like way, way past them. They really don't want to say that. And that's pervasive in science, no, we know what's up. Well, I mean, the beginning of wisdom is to say, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and there are a lot of people who are loath to say that.
Yeah. And I think that's a shame.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
One of the most infamous and interesting stories that you ever hear about Nikola Tesla is about the Philadelphia experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about that? I mean, I know the basics, the story that you hear, but I've never heard it from, an expert on Tesla.
All right. Well, okay. I'll preface this by saying that, even today, the Philadelphia experiment is highly controversial on just exactly what happened. I mean, you have the original story, which came out in the early 1950s, not too long after it allegedly happened, which would have been around, 42, 43, during World War II. And the story goes that the military was looking for a way to make their ships invisible to radar. Not only invisible to radar, but also invisible to magnetic mines that were in the water. Because the Axis were dumping, around harbors and out in the middle of the ocean and stuff, these mines that were magnetic, and they would be attracted to the metal hulls of these ships, attach themselves, and then there would be a timer that, after so long a time, they would blow up. And this was quite a problem. So the Navy's idea was, twofold, that possibly that there would be a good way that you could degauss ships to make them so they wouldn't be attractive, to these mines, but as well using this degaussing process, which involved rotating electromagnetic fields, that is almost like an early attempt at stealth technology, where a radar beam, rather than hitting the hull of the ship and then bouncing back to be picked up by the antenna that originally transmitted, the beam would actually just go around, thus rendering the ship invisible to radar. And allegedly, Einstein had been brought in to work on this idea, and this is a story that has surfaced later. So you're going to have to go and kind of push his phone right here, and who knows if this was true or if it had been added on, but Tesla probably had been brought in because of his coils, his Tesla coils, which could, he had a certain Tesla coil that was called a magnifying transmitter, which means that you could put a little bit of electricity into it and it would step it up to, and again, I'm not that knowledgeable about electricity. You probably know more about it now, but you put in a little bit into it, and it would work it up to a larger amount. The only thing that they had before that would have been Van de Graaff generators. Van de Graaff generators, like what you used to have at school in your science class, that had the silver ball on top, and you'd put your hands on it, and it would make your hair stand on end. A Van de Graaff generator could generate enough power, but you'd need one. I think they estimated it would have been about 25 feet tall. So it'd be a huge. While a couple of Tesla's magnifying transmitters, you could fit them. You could fit a number of them in one room. Mm-hmm. So they brought, they asked Tesla to, contribute to this project. What kind of Tesla transmitters that would be useful for this, and Tesla was happy to oblige. He was a big proponent on the defensive capabilities of governments rather than offensive, but he told the brass that this was something that you didn't want to do while there were people on board the ships. He felt that there were still untested ideas on how this would affect the human body in close proximity to these massive rotating electromagnetic fields that were, they were going from, point to point, and then, I guess, around the hull of the ships. And he was informed by, that, no, we're going to test it out with volunteer sailors on board. Because if these ships were out in the middle of the ocean and, you needed to do this, well, what are you going to do? You're going to take everybody off and do it and then put them back on again. Once Tesla found this out, he was like, that's it, I'm out of here. And he withdrew his participation. The other scientists who were brought in, and there's been all kinds of names bandied around. I can't even remember them. One of them, I think, had the last name of Newman, were brought in to continue the process. And sure enough, allegedly, when they did their first test, now legend has it that the ship was called the Ss Eldridge. Again, this is something that has come up a lot later. I think this probably came out in like the 70s and 80s. So again, you have to really be careful about a lot of this newer information that's coming out, because I think that the movie, the Philadelphia Experiment, has done a lot to add on to this mythology that is probably not necessarily true. A lot of this time travel aspect, sailors jumping off and appearing in the 80s and all that. I think that's been added on to what really happened. But what we're pretty sure did happen was that once they turned everything on, the ship at least appeared to vanish from the Philadelphia shipyard, and then reports came in that almost instantaneously the same ship appeared in Norfolk, in the harbor there. A number of eyewitnesses said they saw it. Again, it was enveloped in a glowing blue cloud. It disappeared, then reappeared back in the Philadelphia shipyard. When it was boarded, a lot of the sailors, and these were volunteers, these were not, if it was the Eldridge, this was not the sailors that had been commissioned to the Eldridge. These were sailors that were brought in from, other ships. A number of them had just disappeared, never to be seen again. Others were found embedded in the walls and bulkhead of the ship, still alive. And according to legends, they had to be basically shot. If their heads were exposed, they had to be shot in the head, because there was no way that they could be taken out. Others were found frozen in position, like they were. And it was more than just being paralyzed. It was almost like they were frozen in time. Allegedly, these sailors were taken away and put into an institution in New Jersey somewhere, and reported to their relatives that they had died in action, or died under other circumstances. And this experiment was carried out at least 3 more times, with the same results each time. People on board these ships did not fare very well. There were some that did survive and did not appear to have any kind of problems. Some of them then later would just mysteriously vanish. It was like that they one wife reported that her husband came home, was home for a while, and then she said he suddenly just turned and walked through the wall and disappeared, never to be seen again. A couple others, mysteriously, spontaneously combusted.
That's very interesting. It sounds almost like Nikola Tesla created a sort of Bermuda Triangle effect within a localized space.
It seems like it. I mean, it's he was. I don't think that he was aware of just exactly what kind of damage this would cause on people. But it's looking at, now that we have kind of like a better understanding on these more possibly, what would you call it, quantum effects, when you're dealing with these types of high frequency electromagnetic fields. We've seen some locations on the planet that seems to be like a natural a conduit of similar circumstances. Like you said, the Bermuda Triangle, possibly the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, and other locations.
The place I want to visit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's hard to say. Hey, visit at your own risk.
I'm not scared. I've been through enough already. I want to, I'm an adventurer. I want to go spend some time there.
Yeah, but yeah, it did seem to have some kind of it didn't affect inorganic matters, at least what we know, but definitely organic conscious. And they probably had animals on board as well. I've never been able to run across any reports along those lines, but that they probably did have, in the hold somewhere, probably, monkeys or mice or dogs or whatever. So, I mean, because some people have speculated that it's only, I don't want to say not just conscious, but self-aware consciousness is affected negatively by these effects. And of course, then there are the stories that after this, they took what they learned from the Philadelphia experiment to do the whole Project Rainbow, which was located at Camp Hero at Montauk, Long Island. Which, I mean, that's a whole nother kettle of fish that involves conspiracies and mind control and like remote viewing psychic powers. But again, a lot of this stuff can be traced back to Nikola Tesla, who, I mean, he probably would be shocked and probably sick to his stomach, thinking that the stuff that he had been working on and trying to develop for the benefit of mankind was being used for all intents and purposes, evil.
Yeah. And on that note, Tim, I think that's a story we'll save for next time. I'd love to hear all about it. Thank you so much for being on the show. This has been tremendously informative and a lot of fun for me. So thank you so much for being here.
Hey, it's my pleasure. I had a great time talking about all this stuff. I always do. And I hope that your audience has enjoyed this as well.
Yeah, awesome. All right, man. Thank you so much. We got to do it again. I'm sure there's much more for us to talk about.
All right. Anytime.
Cool. See ya.
Thank you for checking out this episode of the Order of Chaos podcast. If you would like to book a private tarot reading with me, you can do so at www.theorderofchaosmagic.com. If you enjoyed the show and would like more, please consider subscribing on Patreon, where you will find my blog, a private Discord community, monthly tarot packages, and more.